The Xiaomi Mi 11T is a very interesting device to say the least. This is my first ever Xiaomi device, and of course that means it's my first ever time trying out MIUI, Xiaomi's very own version of Android. Don't confuse the Mi 11T with its older brother, the Mi 11T Pro. The Mi 11T is more of a budget device, a mid-tier phone that comes in at around $400 US. And in my opinion, after having used the Mi 11T for the better part of a month or so, you may want to consider the Xiaomi Mi 11T as your next Android device, because this might legitimately be a viable flagship killer, and in this video I'll tell you guys why. It seems like everyone and their grandmother keeps forgetting about the 11T's existence, and all of the talk is focused and centered around the 11T Pro. But I truly do feel like the 11T deserves to be in the conversation as the best cost-effective phone amongst the 11 series. This phone is running the latest version of MIUI 12.5 based on Android 11. It's the same interface we've come to expect and seen for the past little while, and I kind of do dig the UI being a first-time Xiaomi user. There are little things about the UI that make me question why other Android skins don't include some of these features. With the 11T, Xiaomi is promising 3 major software updates along with 4 major security updates. Not bad for a $400 device. The only real difference between the 11T and the 11T Pro is slower charging speeds and a slightly lower spec sheet, even though the 11T does come with arguably high-level specs for a mid-range device, at least in my opinion. How's it going, everyone? My name is RJ and this is the Xiaomi Mi 11T. Using a mid-range budget device as my daily driver has been a very interesting experience for me. I usually only ever use flagship Android devices such as the S21 Ultra, the Pixel 6 Pro, and so on and so forth. That being said though, as a tech reviewer, I do believe it's very important to switch it up every once in a while and to really experience what it means like to daily drive a budget device. So when I had to switch over to the Mi 11T, I didn't know what to expect, especially in terms of performance. Surprisingly, the downgrade to a mid-tier device wasn't as bad as I initially figured it would be. If you guys want to see more content just like this, then do me a huge favor, drop a like on this video, and of course subscribe to the channel if you do like my coverage on the Mi 11T. Also, if you guys want to see more content from now on centered around budget Android devices, then let me know what device you would like me to cover in an upcoming video down in the comments below. Okay, so first off, the Mi 11T is powered by the MediaTek Dimensity 1200 processor with 8GB of RAM. This is a 6nm processor with 5G connectivity. It is a chip competitor to the Snapdragon 700 series, but not as great in terms of performance as the Snapdragon 800 series. I've never used any processor other than Snapdragon, Exynos, and of course Apple's Bionic chipsets, so I really didn't know what kind of performance to expect from the Dimensity 1200. Once again, surprisingly, the performance was pretty darn good. Day-to-day performance, I would say, is great. More than good enough to satisfy your daily needs. The processor is fast, responsive, and snappy. Launching and loading apps is rather fast, and you can even game on this device with little to no issues at all. I don't personally play a ton of mobile games, but I do play mobile games such as Mobile Legends and League of Legends Wild Rift. These are some graphic intense games that sometimes even flagship Android devices struggle to run without overheating. Now, when you compare gaming performance on the Mi 11T Pro with that of the Mi 11T, you'll kind of be glad Xiaomi opted to go with the Dimensity 1200 over the Snapdragon 888. And you're probably scratching your head wondering, why would I even say that? That doesn't make any sense in terms of performance. Well, the Snapdragon 888 is notoriously known for its overheating issues, so you can probably predict that the Mi 11T Pro will have overheating issues while gaming. Meanwhile, you can game on the Mi 11T for hours on end without ever noticing the back of your device even getting remotely hot. With the Mi 11T, you can expect more than enough power for smooth, daily, dependable performance, which I think is absolutely fantastic because when it does come to budget Android devices, we are always worried about the performance. Taking a look at this design, for some reason, I love the way the back of this device looks. The Mi 11T looks like a flagship Android device in every sense of the word. This design is slick with a 2-step camera bump and a curved glass back panel. The aluminum frame is also curved, and there are subtle textures on the device that look like metal. Not to mention, this white accent is absolutely beautiful. Holding this phone in one hand, it does feel kind of heavy, and reaching either end of the display with one hand can be a cumbersome task. Over on the front, we got a massive 6.67-inch 1080p Super AMOLED display with with a 120Hz refresh rate and a 480Hz touch sampling rate, along with Gorilla Glass Victus protecting the display. This phone, even though it's a mid-tier budget device, it does come with an IP53 rating, meaning that you do get limited dust and water protection. The fingerprint reader is also embedded into the power button, and I love that. This is what I believe every phone manufacturer should be doing. It's easily the most convenient method of accessing your device. My thumb naturally rests in this position anyway while I'm holding my phone, so it makes a lot of sense to just embed the fingerprint scanner into the power button. And you know what? The fingerprint reader found on the Mi 11T is fast and it is reliable, never once missing the timing. I can only say good things about this display. Even though I am a bit of a display snob, I can't find too many negative things to say. This display found on the Mi 11T is super responsive, it goes up to 1000 nits of brightness, the colors are accurate in most tested conditions, and the phone's got good rendering for HDR10 content. Thanks to the 480Hz touch sampling, this phone is super smooth to the touch, and there are no frame drops while gaming. Also, it's super impressive to see that the phone is able to adjust colors to certain apps, like showing off deep AMOLED blacks and 10-bit colors when required. Consuming content on this device is truly a pleasurable experience. This 6.67-inch AMOLED panel combined with excellent stereo speakers makes for truly an immersive experience. The stereo speakers found on the Mi 11T are great. The output is nice and balanced with noticeable lows. Overall, a great display coming from a mid-range device that can rival with flagship devices simply because of the color reproduction and a 120Hz refresh rate. Now, you're probably curious about the cameras, which is understandable. But given that this is technically a mid-range device, we do have to temper our expectations a little bit. We have to remember not to compare these pictures to that of flagship devices, but more so with devices within a similar budget category. The Xiaomi Mi 11T comes with a triple camera layout featuring a 108 megapixel wide sensor, an 8 megapixel ultra wide, and a pretty much useless 5 megapixel macro. The sensors are similar to that of the 11T Pro, minus key features like optical image stabilization. The main sensor, quite honestly, is pretty good. You're able to capture clear images with a lot of detail and natural colors. The ultra-wide sensor is an 8 megapixel sensor and it's not really the greatest. I mean, it is good enough to get you by and you are capable of getting some decent shots with good lighting, but overall it's not a lens that I would rely on too often. Portrait shots also on the Mi 11T aren't the greatest. The image processing is not the greatest and oftentimes it can miss focus of your subject. Night mode is applied automatically to your shots in low light conditions and surprisingly it does work really well. These pictures, even though they were shot in low light conditions, aren't overexposed and the phone does a good job of not overblowing highlights. I was genuinely surprised by how good some of these night shots came out. The Mi 11T does have a 16 megapixel front-facing camera and the selfies you get are what I would consider to be passable. They are by no means the greatest selfies in the world, but more than good enough to capture the moment. On the video side of things, this phone is capable of recording 4K video at 30 FPS. There is a lot of detail in this footage and the dynamic range is flagship grade. Although I would say the colors and the contrast are a little washed out. Definitely not on the video recording level of Apple and Samsung, but once again it's good enough to be considered passable. There is unfortunately no optical image stabilization, but we do get electronic image stabilization, and it does a decently good job of stabilizing footage even when I'm walking at a fast pace or running slowly. If you consider the price to performance ratio of this device, you are getting a lot of camera for the value. Overall though, it's not the greatest camera setup in the world, but still decent enough to get you by on a day-to-day basis. And I would say some of these images are good enough to share on social media. This phone is full of surprises, and the battery life on the Mi 11T is a pleasant surprise. Housing a massive 5000 mAh battery and an efficient chipset means that you will be seeing some great screen on times. I am able to get anywhere between 6 to 7 hours of screen on time easily, which is more than enough battery life to get me through a full days of usage without having to carry around my charger or deal with battery anxiety. Speaking of charging, this phone is capable of 67 watt fast charging, meaning that it takes about half an hour to charge this device from 0 to 100%, which is absolutely insane for a mid-tier device. As you guys saw for yourself, the Xiaomi Mi 11T is a flagship killer through and through. For approximately around $400 US, you will be hard pressed to find a device with an efficient chipset, a 120Hz AMOLED panel, water resistance, fast charging, and a legitimate threat to higher level devices like the 11T Pro. This phone is a great value mid-ranger that can compete with other mid-rangers and definitely worth the recommendation. If you guys do want to pick up this phone for yourself, I will leave a link for you guys in the description below. And as always, thank you so much for watching and don't forget to flex with your tech.